started. So today we're going to talk about the DOM. So this is a big topic when it comes to learning JavaScript. What is the DOM? The DOM stands for the Document Object Model, and it's basically a representation of your HTML web page. So that's what we're going to be learning today. So some of the things that we're going to go over will be like explaining what the DOM is and how it relates to HTML. We're going to go over something called DOM selectors. We're going to describe the different behaviors of each. We're also going to be using different properties and methods to manipulate the DOM. So the DOM will be part of like the browser. So it helps us, it gives us a way to manipulate like the what we have in the browser, basically each website. We'll be creating elements, and we're going to be manipulating those too. This is called DOM traversal. So if you ever heard DOM traversal somewhere, DOM traversal, that's what the DOM traversal means. It means basically creating, accessing, and going back and forth through the DOM. Okay, explain. So we'll be explaining what events are in the browser. We'll also be working with event listeners, which are just kind of like functions that are built with JavaScript that help us like listen to events like mouse click or keyboard press or things like that. And we're going to be able to handle those so we can use them. And then we'll touch a little bit on event propagation. This is going to be, it might fit in today's lecture, it might not, but event propagation is a big topic, but I wanted you guys to understand what it is, at least, so that when it comes in the interview, you guys know what event propagation is. And we'll cover a little bit on that at the end. All right, so let's get started. What exactly is the DOM? Okay, what is the DOM? DOM, as I said, stands for Document Object Model. It's an API, basically. When you hear API, a lot of people, don't understand what that is. Basically, API stands for Application Programming Interface. What does that mean? So the DOM is an object representation of the HTML elements, meaning it's basically a kind of like a copy of your HTML page. Okay, it's a bridge between content, text, images, things like that, and the browser. So the browser is built by another company, like Chrome is built by Google, right? They don't have HTML in the browser. They have a DOM, which is kind of like a object. You guys will learn how objects look like. They're like a keeper value. So they're like an object, or JSON sometimes called. So it's a representation of the HTML on your page. So the DOM is between your content, which is your HTML, your tags, your everything, your CSS, and the browser. So it sits in between. So some of the things that the browser, the DOM is not. So some people think the DOM is JavaScript, which it's not. So the DOM is not a JavaScript. It's not HTML and CSS, and it's very dynamic, right? So it can change every time you change a element on your page, like a tag, paragraph tag. The DOM changes according to that, right? And if you change the DOM, then the HTML page changes. So they kind of like mirror each other, right? So that's what it is. And also what is the DOM then? The DOM is a neutral language. Basically, it means like it's a language built by the browser. People that build the browser build this language, and it's very simple and very simple language. You will see it kind of looks like a JavaScript, but it's not a JavaScript. I'm going to make someone a host, co-host, so you guys can. Okay, Hanan, can you mute yourself? So it's kind of like creating a reverb. Okay, I'll make if Fateh co-host. You can allow people come in. All right. So the DOM is a neutral language, is a tree-like structure representing your content, structure, and style, as I said, and it's dynamic. How does it look like? So this is what it looks like. It's like a root for the tree, basically. It starts from the document, which is like the high level, and I'll show you what that looks like in the browser. And then it has a node and element. The node and element is what we talked about, which is the object, the key pair value. So this element is just an element. So you see that at the bottom, you see that node text. This element or this node is a text node. This one is not a text node. You see it's a tag. So that's how you know. So when it's a tag, then an HTML tag, and then it just says element. When it's text, it says text. That's the only difference. So let's see how that looks like in the browser. Okay, so we right click, we go inspect. When we go to inspect, you see that already you have this. Like you have, this is the HTML. This is the representation of your page, all the things, the body, the header, the nav. You see, like when I go over it, it just changes the colors and it shows what I'm hovering over. So this is your HTML. And then let's see the DOM. So the DOM, if you write here document, see that the document is your whole document. And then within the document is just your HTML, right? It's grabbed your HTML. But the HTML is not the DOM. It's basically it copied this HTML here. So we'll see basically it's just a copy. So if you change this here, it will change this, and if you change it here, it will change this. So it's representation. Basically, it's a copy of your HTML. Okay, so that's what the DOM is basically. I hope you guys watched the video too, but that's what the DOM is. Any question of what the DOM is? No questions. All right. So let's move on. Let's talk about selectors, right? Because how do we select different types of basically elements in the browser? So let me actually open a new code bin, or maybe let's open a new let's create a new project. Let me pause this. So we're going to be using this project, Gibby Planets. It's a basic HTML and CSS, as you can see. So the CSS is here. This is the HTML. So it's very simple, right? So I'm going to show you how to select these elements using the DOM selectors. So what are the DOM selectors? So let's see what that is to start with. So DOM selectors, now that we know how to access DOM using JavaScript, we need a way to select individual elements. Remember, I show you guys the document here. That's what they mean by selecting. So if you say document here, you're selecting the whole document. Now we need to select specific elements in the document, right? To manipulate elements on document, we need to select them. So if we want to change something in here or in the DOM, we need to select them first. There are many ways of doing this. For example, we can select the body, the head, just by asking for them. So we're going to say here, down here, we could say document dot body, and then it will give us the body right here. You could select any element. You could just say documented dot header or dot h1, right? But each one is nested in another element, right? So that complicates things. So we need to be careful of that. But when we want to go deeper, that's where things get complicated. Thankfully, document has several built-in methods. So we have methods that we can use to select things. For example, if you want to select just any HTML tag, right? Any HTML tag, we could use, there's a method called get element by tag name. So these are things that you could write down as a note. There's few of them that we could use. So tag name means just any HTML tag. So it could be like H1, paragraph, things like that. So let's see if we can select maybe like paragraphs, right? Let's actually just copy this and paste it here. So it's gonna go and grab any paragraph in our page. So it couldn't find that. Let's go back here. All right, and we could look for, so there might not be like actual paragraph that you can grab. Let me go here. Let's go back to our example of the lesson that we were doing. So it's easier for us to follow that. Okay. So let's see. So in our HTML, we have a lot of things here. So we have headers, we have navigations, and we have some paragraph, some, all these elements, right? So we can go and select some of them. So let's say we want to select like the logo, like this logo here. We want to select that. So the way to do that is first you have to look at your HTML. Okay, where's the logo? Logo right here. So how do we select that? We can go to our JavaScript. Let me zoom that in. Go to our JavaScript and we could just say, so here we can say, let's write some notes here. Selectors. So we're gonna say, maybe I should turn this off, but it's okay. So let's say select logo. We're gonna create a variable first. So let's create this variable. Let's say logo, and then equal to, and then we're gonna say document. It's gonna give us something else, the query thing, but we don't want the query. So we're gonna say get element by tag name. Let's start with the tag name first. Okay. Tag name. So let's look for any tag here. So if we go ahead and select maybe like header, because we only have one header, which is a tag, we could just say that. And then now if we console log logo and we go here, things are very smushed together. Okay, console, delete. Let's save this. There's a lot going on. It gives us this element header. So let me see. Okay. So it wouldn't allow us that. We can come back for that, no problem. We'll come back for it. Let's start with by ID. Okay. Let's start by ID. So I think I need to turn this off. We have Copilot. Okay. Still not turned off. GitHub Copilot. No, GitHub themes, so I guess GitHub Copilot. Disable. I think I need to reload in. Yeah. All right. So everything went back to normal. All right. Okay. So let's see here. And now it wouldn't bother us. Okay, let's start with get element by ID. So this one is get element by ID. That's how it's written. So you have to write it like that. Get element by ID. So all we have to do is just say document.get element by ID. Okay. So in our HTML, do we have an ID here? Let's just change this logo. We don't have an ID. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna give the logo instead of class. We're also gonna give it an ID here because the class is the JavaScript, the CSS is using that. Let's give an ID of logo. Okay. So we're gonna select this ID in here. So all we have to do is say logo. We're not gonna add here the bound sign. For that reason, the reason is because we already defined it. This is an ID. Later, we're gonna see that we need to add that because we're gonna use something else. So now if we console log this, just console log logo. Okay. It should show us show us the logo. See, it showed us the element for the logo, and as you can see that there's the image too and everything about it. And when you hover over it, you see that the logo has a highlighter. Okay, so this is one way of selecting, and we could also select by a. So that's one way. There's also, you can select by class. So we could just say, so logo 2 document dot get element by class name like that. So it has to be written like that. Get elements by class name. And then we define the element here. Say logo. And it should bring us the same thing if we cancel log. Logo 2. So the thing about, okay, we need to add just one element. Get element by class, get elements by class name. Okay. So it gives us a HTML collection, which is okay. This is one of the reasons why we don't use get element by ID, get element by class name anymore. So for this one, right now, we're going to keep it here. So these two are the main ones. There's also get element by tag name, get element by, there's also get element by, there's different ways you could get element. I think there's 4 of them, but we don't use this anymore. Now we use the new way is this, okay? So the new way is called query selector. There's query selector and query selector all. So instead of having all these like get element by ID, get element by class, this and that, you only need to know these two methods, query selector and query selector all. Okay. So let's do that. So let's say we want to select the logo. Let's comment this out. You could just say const logo equal to document dot query selector. And then query selector works just like CSS. So if you're actually styling something, the way to select something is by using image, using dot class. When it's a class, using dot. When it's an ID, using hashtag. So it's just the same thing. So if we want to select like the ID for the logo, we're going to say hash logo. Okay. And now it should bring out the logo now. So if we console log logo, should bring out the same thing, right? This one is if you want to select the multiple elements. So if you want to select, like, let's say we want to select all these elements that are the same, they have the same class, which is menu item. So let's say we want to select that. Okay, so let's say query. And also you have to write it like this. It has to be written exactly like this, query selector all. Okay, and then we say menu equal to document dot query selector all, and then we give it the class. But remember, it's just like CSS, so you have to give it the dot here. This will create this will create something called a node list. Maybe okay, yeah, we haven't console logged yet. This will create a list basically, but it's not an array, right? So let's go here. It will create something called node list. The node list is basically a list of all the elements. So if you hover over them, you see that at the top, each element. The good thing about node list is that it's just like array, but it only works with two methods. Remember how arrays, they have like a lot of methods. So if you type array methods in JavaScript, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of ways you could manipulate and do all that stuff, right? But node list is different. So as you see, all this is array methods. Okay, so let's see node list. Node list is different. Node list has only two of them. It has the length, right? So that length, so you can know how many elements are there. So we could just say dot length here, and it will show us the length. So 4 of them, 4 elements. So the navigation is 4 elements basically. But it has another one too, which is actually they added new ones, right? But the most useful one is for each. For each means it's basically just like a map. Remember we guys learned for each. Who can give me an idea of what this does? What is for each and what is map? What do they do? Anyone? Remember we learned in the advanced arrays. Anyone remembers that?
I have a background in this. I will try to last day.
That's okay.
You can loop over, right?
Yeah, looping. So they do looping. So for each and map, they do looping. For each, it's just basically in the name. It's for each element, basically. Just give me each element one by one. Remember, I told you the difference between for each and map is that map gives you a new copy, new array. But for each, also I think does give you a new basically new array, but it's a little bit different. But the main thing now is like we could use this to map over these elements right here so the menu. So we could do that. So we'll learn that in a minute. Okay, so these are 2 things that you need to know is query selector and query selector all. So query selector will give you node list. You don't have to use this get element by ID, but in case you get asked what they are, you know now get element by ID is you get the elements in the HTML by their ID, get element by class ID, class name, you get it by class name, and then there's a few other get element by tag name. So those are, just the old way of doing it. So that's why you need to know. It's just for the interview and in the future. Okay, so these are 2 selectors, but now we need to know how to do the mapping over those elements, right? So let's do that quickly. So we're going to use the for each to map over. Okay, so let's select. Okay, we need to select. Let's go back to the HTML. We need to know few things first. We could use this, but it's not going to be that useful. We need to use a one class that comes back. So let's say the card title, this one comes back several times. So you can see there's card title, there's 4 of them, right? And also the card subtitle the same. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab those 2 and then we're going to use for each, right? So let's do that. Select a card title. Okay, we're going to create a variable. We're going to call it card title. You could call it whatever you want. Document dot query selector all. Okay, so now if we want to select the card title, we have to go back and see we have to copy this. It has to be spelled exactly like that. Let's close this. But we have to put the dot in front of it. Okay, so let's do that. And then all we need to do now is we're gonna grab this variable card title. We're gonna say dot for each. First, let me show you how it looks like. Console log card title. As you can see, it's a node list right here. Node list, basically each title. So these titles, we want to do something with them. We want to maybe change their color and maybe make them bigger or something like that. So as you can see, each one of them, and each one has their own element and stuff. So these are part of the DOM. Okay, so let's do for each. Our title dot for each. So in for each, what do we need? What do we need in for each? So remember, this is a same as the advanced array methods. What do advanced array methods take in? What is one thing they take? They have to have. Remember, just like the map and all that, what do we put inside them? Can we just say something like console log, whatever? Can we do that? It gives us an error. We haven't even.
I think you selecting a green somehow, like an ID.
So remember the. So let's go to array method map. So we just want to see how it looks like. We could also go here. Okay. And we could go back to the lesson too. They're not showing us a good example here. Okay, so this is an example. So we're mapping over this. So it says array.map. Remember, it needs a callback function, right? So all these advanced methods or advanced array methods, they all need callback function. If you don't have a callback function, it will not work. So that's why I'm saying, like right here, you cannot just do this. It will not work. So you need a callback function. So first you have to say function, or you could just use a arrow function if you want. So let's do that. Let's use the arrow function. So we could call whatever we want here. We could say item, and then we just open a function here, an arrow function, right? Inside here, we could do a lot of things. So this item thing is each element. So it's each node of each title is the item, right? So we could like select. So let's say item. Let's do something simple. Let's say item dot. In the DOM, there is a way to change the CSS. So we could say style. So this is one thing you need to know how to do. This is style. So style dot color equal to whatever you want here. So let's say red. So you can see it automatically changed. Okay. So the DOM works just like the CSS, but the difference is right now we're using JavaScript. So this is literally just JavaScript. The difference is, like, let's say we want to change maybe like the font size. So the font size, if we're changing the font size, we could also just go down here and say item dot style. And remember, you could use all the things they use in CSS. But when you're doing the font size, you can't say this font size. We can't do that. It will not work. You have to do like this font size. So wherever there is like this hyphen in the middle, you have to make it like this, camel cased. if you ever see anything, like if you go to CSS, there's a lot of places where there's a hyphen. So font size has a hyphen, font weight has a hyphen, margin bottom has a hyphen. So this hyphen needs to change it to something like, camel cased. So that's the only difference. Other than that, you could select any CSS element. So you could select here background color if you want. Background. Remember, it's always background color. Now it's background color. Let's say orange. So you see, changed. And it also changed for all of them, all the titles, because we're selecting the titles, right? So that's pretty cool that you could change things in JavaScript, and you don't have to go to CSS. But this is usually not used for styling the page. It's used for conditional. So let's say if you want it to be this color one time, but when you hover over it to be a different color, or when you click it to be different color, this is what you use. So that's a styling. And also I can help you guys with, so let's say DOM style properties, I think. Yeah. So all these are just same as you can see font size, font family, font style. So this is how they're written. So I'll help you guys with this. So keep this somewhere, maybe bookmark it, in case you forget about this, of how to use it. All right. So that's basically how you select that, the style. Any question about the styling and the node list? The node list has only one thing, which is two things, which is for each and the length. That's it. So the for each is useful because we can like map over elements that we can do something with. If you don't map over them, you cannot add this style and all that. It's already an array, so it wouldn't work. Any question? All right. Okay, so now let's do a little bit, one more with, okay, so we did this. Now let's go back here. Let's look at if we missed anything about the selectors. Okay. So NodeList, there's HTML collection and NodeList. HTML collection comes when we're doing the, what is it called? Get element by class ID, class name, but we're not using that now. So NodeList is the only thing that you need to know. But if you get asked, if somebody asks you what is HTML collections, you say you get HTML collections when you use things like get element by class name. That's the only time. Okay. So now we actually already started manipulating the DOM. So that's what we just did, which was change the CSS. Is part of manipulating the DOM. But you could do more than that. You could change the text. So let's say we want to change the titles, all the titles to one thing, right? All these titles, we want to change them to one thing. What we could do is we could go here and then we could use a property called, let's say, item dot text content is equal to whatever. Now each one of them is going to be called whatever. See each title. So text content is a property that you can use to manipulate the text, right? So it's text content is right here. And also text content is pretty useful because it's safe. There's another one that's called inner HTML if you have seen, and it's that one is not safer. So it's, hackers can use that to manipulate your website. So there's set attributes. So this one is used if you want to change the attribute. Remember we learned like images have like attribute like alt or things like that. If you want to change that, we learned style. Also class list. Class list will return an array like object for all classes on the element. So you'll just target an element and it will give you the classes that it has. The good thing about, so we will learn more about the class list in a minute, but and also we'll practice it. But it's basically useful, and it has two things, which is it has the add and it has a toggle. So you could toggle a class, like you could add a class and remove it on the fly. Okay, and there's a few other ones. There's append child. I think those are, this one, the children. This one you don't need to know that much about it, but let's practice a few of these. Okay, updating attributes to the oh, this. Okay, we did most of this. All right, I think the most important ones are style, class list, text content. Set attribute is good too. It's important to know, but it's not the most important one. So we already did the style. Let's and we did the text content. Let's do the class list. Okay, let's try that. Okay, so class list. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a class, and I think it's already created, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. Let's look for that class. Extra stuff. There's a class called extra stuff. So this class is designed to make something bold. So what we're gonna do is we can select an element, and we could basically make something. We could add this class to any element, basically, right? So let's just do that. First we have to select. Okay, so class list. Let's write some notes here before we do anything. Class list. Okay, class list. So this will allow us to we can remove or add any class. We can also toggle classes. Okay. So, and then here is something to know. Class list returns a something called DOM token list. In case somebody asks you about this, which is basically like basically gives you like a method. Like you don't need to know right now. Actually, this one, forget about it. So let's just do that. Let's add that class. So at the bottom of here on our website, there's nothing. So we want to add something here. So let's do that. So we're gonna create let's call it last card. So actually we're gonna add a card. So there's 4 cards. Let's add an extra card. Okay. Let's say, okay, document dot query selector. What we're gonna select is the class. So we're gonna select that class, extra stuff. So it's in here, extra stuff. And let's see if it's in here. Yeah, so it's in here too, as you can see. It's part of this class. So it's part of this class. So this class is already in here. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna remove it. So as you can see, right here, the last one is bold. I forgot this. I created this project a long time ago. So I forgot how I set it up. As you see here, the last card is bold. You see that, right? It's bold. So these are not bold. This is bold. I can also change the, let's make it obvious and add here color red. Okay, so you can see the difference basically. Now what we want to do is we're going to use class list to remove this class basically. Okay, so we selected that class. Now all we have to do is we have to say last card dot class list. It has to be written like that. Dot remove and then we could just select that. You don't have to do the dot because it tells us here class list. So now, as you can see, it's removed. Another thing we could do is we could toggle, but we haven't learned how to do that yet. We haven't learned events. So we're going to learn events soon, which is basically when you click something, it changes. So that's when we could use the toggle, going back and forth, basically. Okay. So that's what class do. You could add and you could add too. So if we could just say add, and then it will add that. See, remove, add, the same. They work against each other. And then there's toggle. Those are only 3 things that you need to know. So class list methods equal to add, remove, and toggle. Okay. Toggle is basically adding and removing back and forth, basically going back and forth. Any question about class list and what it does? We will learn the toggle soon when we're doing the events. Okay. All right, let's learn append child and what it does. So append child and prepend, they're the same. The only difference is that append child is basically the DOM language and prepend is JavaScript, right? That's the only difference. But they do the same thing. What they do is basically if you want to add an element that is not on the page, basically not on the website. If you want to add, let's say if you want to add another card, you could use the append child, basically saying, okay, this is another child. Remember that we learned HTML has like parent and child, and that these 4 cards, they have a parent, right? Of course, they have a parent element, which is this one right here. So they have I think the group, the card group, the div is the parent. So you're basically saying add a child to these. Okay. So that's what it does. So let's see if we can do that. But before we do that, we need to create a new element, right? We need to create a new element. Actually, we don't have to create a new element, but we could also use HTML, but I want to show you how to create a new element while using this, because we do have that. Where is it? We have to cover the create element portion, which is here, create element. So let's do the create element first, and then that element will be basically another card, and then we're gonna add that card to the element. So let's do that. This is gonna be a little bit tricky, but once you understand it, how to add an element, then it's gonna be a lot easier. So let's copy one of the cards. Okay. Let's copy this. Creating new element. Okay. We don't actually have the notes for that. Let me grab. Let me grab one. Not sure where I put my, but it's not a big deal. Okay, so creating a new element. We're gonna use we're also gonna use the method create element. Create element. So there's a method called create element that we could use. So we could just basically we could create an element, and then we could append it basically to anywhere. Okay. So now I'm just gonna paste the HTML we just copied here, and we're gonna comment it out. Let's make it so that it's nested in a better way. Okay. I think all these text is gonna confuse us, so let's make it smaller. Okay. I'm just putting this as just for us to see. It shouldn't be here. It's not a HTML file. All right. So we see all these elements. We see the div with the class card class. We see an image here with the class this. We see another div, h1, h3, all that, right? So let's see if we can create this from scratch using just JavaScript. Okay. And then kind of putting it together. Okay. So let's see that. I think this is gonna confuse you guys. I just wanna, okay, so we're gonna create, this is gonna be the next class. So I don't want, like, this is creating a component. So we don't want to go that route. Let's create a simple component. Let's add a footer to the website, right? Because this is a little bit out of the scope of the class, which is creating a component, basically using JavaScript and creating something from scratch. So we're going to create something simple. We're just going to add something at the bottom of the website. That's all we're going to do. Okay, so let's do that. First thing we need to do is we need to select the footer, right? Because we need to add something to the footer. So right now we don't even have the footer. So let's create that. So let's create that element. So let's say const footer document dot. This is where you use it, create element, okay? And then we're just gonna say create an element called footer. So what is it gonna do? It's gonna go ahead and grab and create an element called footer. And if we console log this, you see that footer. You see that it's just an element called the footer. See, footer, and it gives you the closing tag and all that stuff, which is great, right? So it gives you the closing tag. All right, now we just need to add a couple of things to it. That's pretty much it. So we need to add text. So let's add some text. Let's say footer. Who remembers how to add text? What do we use? Remember, we covered here. How do we add something like a text to an element? So if we go up here, this is text content, right? So this is how we add something to anything, to any text, basically. So keep that right in a note. So next time I ask, you know that. So a text element equals to adding some text or adding any type of text. Text content is equal to, let's say, created by Gibby School. Okay. Let's also add a class called footer. Okay, I think we have that somewhere. Yep, we have a class called footer. We're not using it anywhere. So let's add that. Footer dot class list dot add. And then here's where we add. We just say footer. Okay. And the last thing is we need to add a background color, maybe, or maybe not. Let's just skip the background color for now. Let's add let's append. So here's where we do append child or prepend. They're the same. So let's select the element we're gonna add to. So remember, like, we're adding the footer in the body, right? So add in footer right here. So right before this script tag, which doesn't matter because it doesn't matter if it adds in front of it or at the end of it. So we just want to add it here. So first, let's select the body, right? So you need to select where you want to add it or where you want to append it to. So const, let's call it like parent element equal to document dot query selector. So this will be the body tag. Now all we have to do is just connect the two. So the footer and the body tag or the parent element. So it's just going to say parent element dot append, and then let's say footer. So we're appending, we're connecting the footer to the body tag. So now our website is going to look different. So if we go at the bottom, there's nothing. Okay, so I refreshed it. There's something. Okay. But why is our class not working? Let's go back to the class list. So font size, that, okay, it kind of looks like that. And then let's add maybe color. Let's make it white. Fresh. It's not working. Okay. So why is that? Class list footer dot class list dot add footer. Okay. Let's make it so that it is let's add some quotation here. I'm worried it's gonna single quotes not work. Okay, still nothing. It added the element, so it did add this element, the footer, which has this, but it's not doing this, right? So let's see if we can actually, instead of this, let's comment that out. Are we even saving? Okay, we're saving. Let's add some style here. Instead of that, we can just add the style here. Say footer dot style. The style dot color is equal to white. What did I do? Sorry, took a screenshot. Okay. Okay, so the CSS is working, but the class list is not working for us. We need to find out why it's not working. Okay. Class list. That. Okay. That should have worked. Let me double check something. Okay, footer. Okay. Everything looks good to me. Comment this out. Okay, class list. Let's add maybe another class here. I think we have to say here dot because it's a class list. Should. Maybe let's go here and make it smaller. That should have worked, but it's not working right now. Just okay. The main thing is this is how you could add a class, but we could add all the things that the class has, like this. So we could just say, grab this padding. We could say footer dot style that padding is equal to, what was it, 20 pixels. And then what else? And font size. You could say footer dot style that font size is equal to, what was it, 20 pixels. And then, yeah, and then we added the color already. So you can see, and then we can also center it, and we can just say footer dot style dot, I think it's text align. It's equal to center. See, center that too. So you could use, the style method if you want, but you could also add class. I'm not sure why it's not adding right now, but I will figure it out later. Okay, so that's how we add, and we did we created an element, we appended, we used appended child, so you could use either one of them. So if you could just say here, append or appended child, it should be the same. It'll bring you the same result. And then we did all that. I wanted to create this whole element, but we're gonna do that when we're doing the component creation, which is the last lesson for JavaScript. I think it's so I think it's week 7. Okay, what else do we miss? Any questions so far? I know this is confusing, but it's basically creating an element and then adding something to it. It's basically just the HTML, but you're using JavaScript to do all that work, which is tedious, on purpose, because you're gonna find something called React when we finish this JavaScript, which will streamline this whole thing, will make like really simple. Any questions? All right. Okay, let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back. Let's take 5-minute break, and then inshallah we'll be back and finish up the last part of it. All right, see you guys soon. So yeah, so let's start with let's get back to it. Before I start, any questions? Because I feel like when we're quiet, I feel like you guys are confused. That's my understanding. So let me know if you have any question about what we just covered. It's a lot of things I know, but it's a lot of important stuff. You could also write your questions, so feel free.
Alec, we're here, we're listening.
Okay. Yeah, I just want you guys to not feel like this is like overwhelming, and you guys are not catching up and it's too hard. I can slow down at time, so feel free. And you have like this written format you could follow, and also I will share the code I wrote and everything, so you guys will have that too. So yeah, so let's go to the last portion of this, which is events. So events, what are events? So as you can see, like if we go to any most websites, you'll see that, for example, like Facebook, when you create a comment, you could just submit that comment, and Facebook will post that comment without refreshing the page, right? If you create like a tweet, the same thing, you create a tweet, and then boom, like the tweet just goes without you refreshing the page. That's only if you're using a browser. So those are called events. They allow us to kind of like do things with the browser without refreshing or doing things. So if you go to any website, let's look for JavaScript events. Okay. So it says here, okay, so JavaScript events. So we use basically the get element by ID or query selector we just learned to select an element and then add an event to it. So add an event to it is basically just using a function, and that function, whenever you click the element, that function runs. Basically, that's what it means. All right, let's go to somewhere with event references. So not these. Okay. So let's actually look for JavaScript event list. Event listeners, that's what they're called, event listeners. Okay. So event listeners, I don't know why they don't give us like a reference of all the events. Every time I have to look for it to find it. we could just look for one of them, which is event click mouse. Okay, so there's a lot of them, but the main thing is there's few of them that are more the most used. For example, like click. Click is the one that's most used. So let's see what they are basically. So let me just draw quickly an example. So let's say you have like an let's change that color. Let's say you have a like HTML element, and then the HTML has like a text here, and then you have like a little box here that says, or a button that says click or whatever, or submit. So what you could do is this element has, let's say, a class called submit, right? So submit is a class. So you could use a JavaScript method called add event listener. So it's called add. Oh my drone is horrible. Add event listener. We'll write it down, all of it. Listener. And then that add event listener takes a method. So it takes basically what you want it to do. So this time it would be click. So we'll add a click. So it's just a string called click. And then the second element it takes, so this is an actual function or a method. The second thing it takes is a callback function. So just a callback function. And then this function that's what you want to happen. So like, let's say if you want to change the color, you could say something like, first you have to select the element somewhere, documented that query selector, and then get element. And then you grab the variable you created. So let's say submit variable. And then you just do whatever you want. So you could say style, color, you do all that stuff. So that's basically what event listeners do. Is basically, instead of here click, you could make it this a mouse. You could say mouse hover or mouse out, mouse in. So there's a lot of them, right? So if we go back to our lesson, there's add event listener, and the add event listener takes in a click, as you can see here, or any event, and then it has a callback function. You could do this. You could put the callback function outside. Remember where we did the callback functions, but you don't have to. You could consider this as like those array methods that we went through, which has the callback function. But now there is a thing that you have to add here. There's a mouse click. There's a key press. Key press is when you press the keyboard. Okay. So there's actually a link already. Okay. So there's a lot of them, right? There's print. So these are all the event listeners. If you go to mouse, there's a lot of them about mouse. Okay, so there's a lot of them here. Okay, so the mouse would be like key up, click, double click. So if you see DPL click, double click. Mouse down, mouse enter, mouse leave, all this stuff is about the mouse. There's also keyboard ones. There's a lot of them. Okay, so let's practice that and see how that actually works, right? So let's go back to our lesson. And once we finish this, we're gonna do a quick example of like how your homework is gonna look like, basically. And then after that, I haven't prepared the homework yet, so I have to do the video for it too, just like last time. All right, so we did all that stuff. So now underneath here, we're gonna do event listeners. You guys can hear me clearly, right? I moved my mic.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, so event listeners. So the first thing is we need to select the element that we wanna add the event to. So let's say we wanna change something about this image, right? maybe we want to make it so that when we hover over it, we want it to like zoom in, and then when we leave it, we want it to zoom out to give it like a little like nice effect, right? So first thing we need to do is we need to go check the HTML and grab the the class or something about this image. So usually class is good. You could add a ID here if you want. You want something specific that touches on this image. And also we want to do to all the images like that, right? So this class will do it. Who can help me do the selection? What do we do here when we want to select an element? Or multiple elements? Let's say we create a variable. Let's call it something like let's call it like a card image, right? And then what do we do here after that? We're doing selection, remember? How do we select an element? We've been doing this for all the things we were doing here. Selection. Remember that everything starts with document, right? We have to say document. And then we have to do, if I ask you, so this, you could write this as a note. If I ask you to select one element, it's document.query selector. That's it. So if I ask you, how do I select this element? You could ask me, is it one element or two or multiple elements? One element, query selector. If it's multiple elements, query selector all. That's it. That's all you need to know. And now we're just gonna add that class here. It should give us a we could select the first one. Let's select the first one. So if we say query selector without the all, it will select only the first one, right? So let's try the first one. Otherwise, we have to do the mapping over. We have to do the for each. Okay, so now we could console log if we want, but it's this one. Okay, now let's add a event then. Okay, card image dot add event listener. Just like that. It has to be written exactly like that. It's a method that's already created for you. What are we going to do here is we're going to say mouse enter. Mouse enter. So mouse enter is this one. So mouse enter is this one. Fired when a pointing device using a mouse is moved over an element that has a listener attached. Okay. So it fires when we hover over it, basically. That's what it's saying. Okay, in here, then we need second thing, which is callback function, right? So the callback function, it's going to be an anonymous callback function, meaning it doesn't have a name. So if it doesn't have a name, we just have to do this like that. So this is anonymous callback function. Now here's what we change here. So whatever we do in here will happen whenever we hover over it. So let's do this. Let's do not earth. Let's do card image dot style dot, let's make it, let's transfer it. So there's also in CSS there is a property called transform. Okay, so this will be equal to, and then it will be scale. So this is just a CSS. So it's a little bit more advanced CSS, but it is CSS. Let's scale it, make it a little bit bigger. That's basically what we're saying. So if we go now and hover over it, it's doing that. But is it doing it? Let's see. Okay. So now it's smaller. What is happening? What is it? Okay, let's hover over it. Yeah, it's doing it. So it's doing that, but it's kind of jumping. So let's make it simpler. Let's make it smoother, basically. So we're gonna say card image dot style dot transition is equal to, let's say, all 0.3s. Basically, this is a CSS. It means when you're doing transition, make it take time, basically, instead of a jumping. See, that's good. That's better than the jump. Okay. So now, but the problem now is like we have to refresh every time because it's stuck there. So we have to add another one to scale it down, right? That's all we have to do. So we have to add another event listener. We have to say card image that add event listener, and then this one will be mouse leave. So when the mouse leaves, callback function, and then all we have to do is copy this. But now we're gonna scale it down to maybe like 1. Okay, so now when we hover over it, it's like that. We leave it, it goes back. That's pretty cool. Okay, so that's event listeners, and you could use as many things as you want here. Like you could create any type of event. That's what I mean. Create any type of event. You could make it about the keyboard. So keep all these events somewhere. They're really important. Later, I'll ask you to use some of them, at least maybe 2 or 3 of them, to create something. So you have that as a reference. Any question about event listeners and how they work? All event listeners look like this. The only difference is what's inside. Okay, well, let's use one more, which would be the, let's just use a click. On this click, we're gonna remove remember I told you guys the class list has toggle. So let's do that, but let's target this text right here. So let's target that. So let's create another one here. This would be, I think we already created that. So it will be some extra stuff, this one. So let's move this. Let's comment this out. Actually, we need it too. So let's copy it, go down here. If you refresh it now, it still has that. So we're gonna add event listener. First, let's copy this. Okay, we selected that extra stuff, and now all we need to do is add event listener. So we're gonna say last card that add event listener. This would be click, and then callback function. And then let's add that same thing, but now instead of add, let's say toggle, right? So when we click it, it should add or remove the CSS. See, we click it, it's gone. We click it, it's back. Click it, click, click, click. That's pretty cool, right? With like 3 lines of code, we created this toggle thing that allows us to toggle whatever. So any CSS, anything, you could toggle it. Any questions so far?
Man.
Yeah.
So the last example you're doing right now, we're using add events event listener,
Yeah.
but we're gonna use class list since we targeting the class. Is that right?
Yeah, we're using class list here. So all we're doing now is we're basically saying like every time we click, either add or remove the class called extra stuff, which is this one at the end, like this one. extra stuff. So I can also show you in the browser. So let me show you that. So if we go here and go to this, you see that this doesn't have extra stuff here, right? When we click it, it will add extra stuff. Sorry, at the end. Extra stuff, we click it, it removes, we click it, it adds. So that's pretty cool. So the class list, that's what it does for us, is adding or removing any type of class. But the class is already in the CSS. So it's not doing anything with the CSS, right? It's only manipulating the HTML. Remember, we're working with the DOM. So when manipulating the DOM, we're not manipulating the CSS itself. And also, it's not manipulating permanently if you haven't added here. So if you do something like you use here, this will not be permanent. But you have to save it in a file for that to be something other people can use. Any question? Okay. So we have a little bit of time left. So I'm gonna try to, let's see if we have anything we forgot. So the event listener, we did the click, we did the mouse, hover over. Okay. There's one more thing that I want to cover, which is called event propagation right here. This one is a little more complicated, so I'm not sure if I want to cover all of it or if I want to cover a little bit of it, because it will take time if we want to go in depth. I want to send you guys a video that explains what exactly it is, but I want to just give you like a understanding of basics of the event propagation. So let's see, we did the event, we did the whole thing, we did the click, right? Now the event propagation comes when we have elements that are nested. So let's say this click, let's say we have this button, right? Click button. This click button has this element. So let's say this is a div, right? Let's say this is a div. And we added a event to this div. We added add event listener to it, but it has a different type of event, not, it has different type of event. And then on top of it, there's another div, and we want to change maybe like the background of it. So we added event, this add event. Now, this is where event propagation comes. Event propagation has two things. So event propagation means when you click this button, the event, since this is the child element, right, for this div and this div, that the click you did here will propagate or will bubble, as they say. There's the word here, bubble, will bubble into this event and this event. So these two events will trigger. All the events that are the parent of this click will trigger, right? No matter what. So I'll show you that as a quick example. Okay, let's see as a real world example of that. I actually have like a really nice, really nice example. Let's go to our code bin, which there was a thing that I designed for. So let's look for bubble here. Yeah. So let me show you this. So this is, you don't need to know anything about this right now. But this box you can see now has 3 boxes. So when we click the box in the middle, if we didn't stop event propagation by using this method, stop propagation, this method, basically what happens is it goes, this will be triggered, and this will be triggered, and this will be triggered. And all of them, they have event listeners. And I'll show you. So let's actually remember bubbling. So bubbling is what we're talking about here. So let's comment this out. There's two things. There's bubbling and there's capture. That's why I didn't want to go into in depth, because it's a lot of confusing stuff. But the main thing is to understand that if you have event here and you click it, so let's actually run it and pay attention to the boxes, right? Pay attention to the boxes. So when we click now, it should say the box in the middle clicked, this one clicked, this one clicked, but all I'm doing is clicking only this one, but the event is bubbling, remember? So click this, clicked. I didn't do anything now. It's go doing by itself. Right? I actually designed this for you guys to understand this. Let's try this one more time. Now it says box 3, box 1, box 3, box 2. But all I'm doing is clicking box 3. Clicked, add it. That's the only one I clicked. Now box 2 is clicked, box 1 is clicked. So that's kind of inconvenient, right? Like you don't want that because you don't want all your events firing when you click an event that's like targeting only like a child element. Does that make sense to you guys? Because I want you guys to understand that concept of like, if you have a child element with an event, if you click that, if you don't use this method, stop propagation, it will bubble up. The event will bubble up. Does that make sense to you guys?
A little bit.
Okay. Any question about that? So that's the bubbling. We need to stop that bubbling though, right? There's also a thing called capture, which is the opposite of the bubbling, meaning that if you click this, it will go from the top. So it will start from here, go here, go here. So that's what capture is, but you don't need to know that right now. So we need to stop that bubbling thing, right? So to stop that, all we need to do is we need to add stop propagation to the event, all right? We need to add stop propagation to the event. So let's do that. Let's go here. And you don't need to know all this code right now, but we have different events here running. We have this event running. The way it's written a little bit different than what you guys just learned, but it's exactly the same. It's just the formatting is a little bit different. So you have this event running. So all we need to do is we need to go here, and then I think before the set timeout, no, after the set timeout, we need to add here stop propagation, and then add here stop propagation, and then add here. So each event, it has to have that like that stop propagation. Hopefully that's how it's put in, but let's try it out. It's been a while since I actually tried that. So now, okay, now we went back to normal. Let's click the child element, the box 3. So we click the box 3. Click it again. Okay, what's wrong with it? Something is wrong. It's not firing. I think we have to put it at the bottom of it because we're stopping all this from happening. So let's do that. Instead of the front. Okay. Let's move it at the back. Okay. All right, so let's see. So save. All good now. Let's try clicking it. Clicked. So you can see, oh, it didn't stop. Okay, we have a problem now. So let's see where the problem is. So we need to add the, okay, let's look for stop propagation. JavaScript. Okay, just want to see where we want to add. I think we have to connect to the event itself. Just want to see example. Okay. Yeah, so we have to say event propagation, which we just call back. Okay. We don't have the event. So we need to add. Give me 1 second. We just need to add after click. We need to add that. So right here, yeah, we need to use this E and put it right in front after in front of this. So this E is basically event. You could just say event here. Instead of E, we could just say event here. So let's do that. So this is basically the event, what is basically happening right now. And each callback function for each event should have could have that, but for our examples here, we don't have that. It's empty here, right? So you could add event here and then do that event, propagation and stop it like that. So now it should work. So let's run again. Click. Okay, it's still not working. Fully, I think we have to move it to the front. It's been a while since I actually looked at this. It's been like maybe like a year. Maybe we have to move it outside of the set timeout. Let's try one more time. Okay. So the goal is for it to stop and just only do click here, box 3, instead of okay, so it's not stopping. Yeah, I think we have to move it outside of this. Okay. Let's go back to the example here. Event propagation, okay. So it goes at the end of it. Not a good example. Okay. Don't want to waste a lot of time with it, but let's try one more time. Move it outside of the set timeout. Okay. Hopefully now works. All right. Okay, so it's working now. So as you can see now, I just clicked the inner child and it didn't propagate. It didn't go up all the way. That's what we want. So yeah, so it has to be, so this set timeout thing, it doesn't matter right now. We could just move all this to here. I can make it look like the way you guys saw it. So set timeout, we could remove that. And this is the, instead of this, we have to make a variable for this. So let's say const box1 is equal to, and then just go down here and then add box1 here. So this is how you guys saw it when I was creating it. Okay. So this is how you guys I showed you at the beginning. So this is basically the same as what like this too. So it should work the same. But yeah, you just it's the callback function, you give it an event or whatever word you want here, it doesn't matter. Usually event is good, and then stop propagation. So that will stop the propagation. And now if we click like the second one, you should just click and then not go to the top one, right? So that way everything is separated and everything is, its own box. Any question about that? Okay. I will cover this prevent default in another lessons. It's a little more, it's useful for like forms and stuff like that. well, it's good to know this star propagation thing for interviews and stuff like that. And also if you have, like, if you're confused, or like you click something and like other things fire, like why is that happening? Well, it's bubbling. All right, so we have like 10 minutes to cover something. Any question? Okay, so the example of like the homework is that you guys gonna have an empty HTML web page or website that I already created. And then the goal is for you guys to fill in the content, right? To fill in the content, and also to add the classes and stuff like that, right? So I'll give you something like all the content in a format like this. So I'll say something like const. I'll say like content is equal to, and then it will be, everything will be in an object format. So I'll say something like title. We'll say something like welcome our website. I'll say something like nav. It will be something like this. Nav. I'll say something like a nav1 here. Home. Nav2. Contact. Nav3. About us, right? Something like that. And then the rest here will be something like main. This will have another object. It will have something like paragraph 1, this and that, and title 1, paragraph 1, stuff like that. It will be organized that way, and it will be like a nested object. And I want you guys to like use your object knowledge to select each one of them. So let's say we want to add this to our here. So let's say we want to change the title. So our website says here, where is it? It says Gabby Planets, and we want to change to something else. So let's say we want to say something like Earth Day, something like that. Okay, so that's the website name. If we want to change that, let's say this would be like empty. Basically, this would be empty here. Be like that. Okay. And if we go back, it should have nothing here. Now, if we want to select this, we have to select the element first. So I have to say, okay, so where is that supposed to be? It's supposed to be here. Now, this has an ID of logo title. We just grab that and we select it. We say here const, we say website title document dot query selector, and it's an ID, not on a class. Keep that in mind. So you have to give it a hashtag here. Now we selected. Now we need to add this Earth Day thing on it. So all we need to do is now we say website title dot text content is equal to. Then now we have to select from here. So I have to say content dot title. Now if we go back to the website, it should say Earth Day here. Does that make sense to you guys? So that would be similar to what the homework, but this would be more complicated. There would be more stuff like this, and there will be more nested things. And you have to figure out how to find that nested stuff. Remember that if you have something like, let's say nav bar or something like that, if you have, usually it's underscore. If you have something like that, you cannot select it with the dot notation. So do it like this. So you have to do like that. You have to do nav bar. I mean, with the quotes here. Select it like that with the brackets. If you don't have anything, 2 words that are separated, then you could use the dot notation. Just keep that in mind. Any question? I'll give you maybe one more example in the homework when I'm recording the video, but this will be the most of it. And then part of it will be for you guys to use the event listeners, maybe like somewhere between 3 to 5 event listeners to manipulate the website and like make something happen. So that would be part of the homework. But other than that, if you guys do the homework, then you're really good at selecting elements and all that stuff. I'll add one last one, which would be creating an element, adding an element that doesn't exist yet. So that would be one more challenging one in the homework. But hopefully, if you have any questions, if you're stuck, let me know. I'll try to help you, inshallah. Any questions?
معلم.
Hmm.
So when we're doing the homework, the changes we made is not going to be permanent, right?
Unless, so there's going to be a JS file. If you put it in the JS file and save it, it's permanent. So right now, what we were doing here, the title earth thing, if you refresh, it's still there, permanent. Yeah. So if it's in the JS file, then it is a permanent. And also you have the object here and all that stuff. Yeah. Any question?